and I'll say Happy New Year. I know quite a few of you were at last night's meeting, so but I wasn't, so I get to say Happy New Year now. We'll have a slightly customised start to the meeting today, if that is right. So I have no apologies for absence, but obviously we have extended the invite list for today's meeting due to our first item on our working agenda, the investment partnership. Item number 8, the investment partnership, there is a part 2 element, but if I have no objections from councillors present, I will invite officers to treat that as one item, which will basically mean we will be deemed to move into part 2 at the beginning of that item, as I do not believe there's anybody currently present in the meeting who would need to be removed. So we should be able to move through with that. So assuming nobody has any objections to that and doesn't feel that we need to break the presentation into 2, speak now or forever hold your peace. But similarly, if anybody joins.
Can I ask guidance on whether the items which are on the agenda in part 2 should be recorded in the public minutes as a matter of procedure? If you discuss it in part 2, you might put it into private what effectively should be in the public arena. I don't see how you can do that.
There will be a separate part 2 minutes which will document the decisions arising, and the part 2 recording will be restricted as well, so it won't be accessible to the public.
If we're going to discuss them, sorry Chair, if we're going to discuss them as one item, how do you separate out those 2 conversations?
I understood there was going to be an introduction into part 1, and if there were any questions relating to the part 2 aspects, then we would
go through. So for the purposes of the minutes, you're saying that we will need to treat them as 2 separate items so that they can be done on the recording. Okay. So with apologies to presenting officers, we will need to keep those as then 2 distinct items. Okay. Thank you for the input on that. Bear with me on my sheet seems to be frozen up. All right. Do I have any declarations of interest? No public.
Sorry,
Thank you.
Sorry, did you say there were no apologies for absence?
I've received no apologies for absence.
I was under the understanding I was substituting for Councillor
Pound.
yeah, that's correct.
Indeed.
Right. So if that's noted by member services, okay, then yes, welcome Councillor Anderson, substituting Councillor Pound.
Chair, since Councillor Anderson is substituting for Councillor Pound, is it being formally recorded that Councillor Pound has given her apologies, which she has?
Democratic Services are nodding to say they have received apologies. I'm not sure that I've received them, but that may have just been a communication side, or I may have completely missed something on mine, but okay. So public participation, we have none, and consideration of any matters referred to the committees for call-in is also none. Action points for the previous meeting. We have a few items on that. Nigel, yourself and Mark met with Paul Kelly at Little Gadsden Parish Council. I'll look to Councillor Duris just to confirm that he's happy that is closed off, but obviously was a request from the whole committee rather than just Councillor Duris.
I think this refers to the town and parish grants, and yes, that's completed.
Right.
Whether or not it will come back again, who knows?
Okay. We're confirming that the action point has been done. Then also related to the town and parish grants, there's a question from Councillor Gale. The answers are published in the papers. We can close that. And fees and charges, we have information from the officers responding to Councillor Capozzi's questions. So finally, on the corporate and commercial performance report, Councillor Greenfield, you've had some additional information published there. You're happy that that will close. Okay, thank you. That's a nice blank carryover to move forward onto that. That brings us to the work programme. Do I have any inputs or requests on the work programme? No. So with that, we will move to our first item for the day, which is Dacorum Investment Partnership. And we'll invite David Barrett to open the note. Catherine is going to open. Sorry, apologies.
Thanks. So following Cabinet approval in June for Dacorum to enter into an investment partnership with the Hill Group, a lot of work's taken place to set up the partnership and develop a first investment plan. And as members may recall, the intention of the partnership is to take a longer term portfolio approach where development opportunities can be looked at across the borough for affordable housing, regeneration and growth. The investment plan focuses, that we're talking about today, focuses on the initial short-term plans proposed to take forward while assessing at a higher level some of the longer-term pipeline for potential consideration. So without any further ado, I'll pass over to Matt, who's going to give a brief overview and summary of the report and plan that will be going to Cabinet in February, and then we'll have questions.
Thank you, Catherine. Yes, so I've got a short presentation to supplement the paper and the appendix, which is attached. So just a bit of background, just to help with the discussion and consideration. So a reminder that the investment partnership is a 50-50 limited liability partnership with Hill Investment Partnerships, and this was established in July following Cabinet approval to do so. And the rationale for establishing the partnership came about as a result of a strategic asset review work stream on delivery vehicle options review. So the key objectives driving the partnership are to increase housing supplies, both of affordable homes but also of an appropriate tenures, to support wider regeneration and placemaking, including particularly in Hemel Hempstead Town Centre to support projects there, and also a third aspiration to support and secure long-term income streams for the council. The benefits of this model, as opposed to the council developing by itself, are really in sharing of risk, so both risk and costs. So as part of establishing the investment plan, we're working in a joint investment team with Hill. We're sharing the risk and we're sharing the upfront costs of establishing the development proposals. We also, the council will also stand to share in 50% of any development profit that's made through the vehicle. And from the council's perspective, clearly this can be invested into further aspirations around regeneration and potentially less viable aspirations. There's also potential to secure a commercial return on borrowing rates through onward lending. And using this capacity of Hill and also their knowledge in developing schemes, we stand to accelerate housing delivery and regeneration in sites which, without this model, are unlikely to come forward in the current development climate. We benefit from accessing Hill's existing supply chain, which goes beyond the build contractor. We're able to maximise affordable housing by being part of the developer. We can trade off the council's various aspirations and prioritise affordable housing as part of that. As it's a programme approach and a long-term approach, we also can benefit from a bespoke social value strategy, which will be part of the investment partnership. Similar to the council, working with Hill, high sustainability aspiration for higher sustainability standards. There's also finally an opportunity to grow the council's housing stock as part of this. So this is a separate vehicle, and other options are available in terms of who ultimately purchases and manages the affordable housing. But certainly there's an aspiration as part of this that the council could look to increase its own council stock as part of this vehicle. So as I mentioned, in July, we went to Cabinet. The members' agreement was finalised in August, and we've been working in a joint investment team between July and September to build on the strategic asset review, to perform a detailed analysis of all of the sites within the council's portfolio, and to recommend from that identification of immediate priority sites. From those immediate priority sites, we've undertaken the necessary feasibility work and due diligence, which have allowed us to be in a position to present high-level appraisal positions in the investment plan. Following the investment plan preparation, it's gone so far to various internal governance approvals, as well as the partnership board in January. And here we are today at Scrutiny in January. It's on to go to Cabinet on the 3rd of February. At the same time as the approvals and working with the investment plan, we've been working on the emerging social value strategy, and we've also started marketing the entity through LinkedIn. So we have a LinkedIn page, and we're active on there. So obviously you've got the investment plan in the pack. So I'll just summarise some of the key points. So this is the first annual investment plan of the investment partnership, and it provides the framework for how DIP is going to operate and appraise sites. It identifies priority sites and future opportunities. And for the priority sites, there's obviously some detail on unit numbers, assumed housing mix, and the high-level financial estimates at this stage. There's also a budget request to take 2 of those priority sites through to planning, as well as for feasibility work on a 3rd, and budget requests for 8 future sites identified. The investment plan doesn't fix the scheme design or the appraisal position, so at this point we don't have a fixed position on the profit or the land value to the council. This will be subject to the detailed design and planning. But the work that's been undertaken to date on the short-term sites does enable us to recommend to DIP board and to Cabinet to invest in these sites to develop further detail, which will come back to Cabinet for final decision on the scheme and land disposal. So as I say, we've got high-level feasibility at this stage. On the appraisals which are used as part of the recommendation, it's important to consider how in this model the council has 3 different roles. It's obviously has a role as landowner, seeking a return on its land. It has a role as a developer, seeking a development margin on the development, but also clearly a role with a social purpose, seeking to deliver both the right quantum, but also type and mix of affordable housing. And these 3 things are trading off against each other. But one of the advantages of this model is that the council has a say in those trade-offs. We'll come back to Cabinet with the detailed final appraisal position, which will have considered each of those trade-offs. It will be the overall benefit to the council, both overall financial position and understanding the non-financial benefits of the affordable housing and regeneration. So the priority sites that are in the investment plan, we have Cherry Bounce, which feasibility suggests we can deliver between 50 and 60 homes in a largely housing-led scheme, 40% of which would be affordable, so that'd be up to 24. The former Civic Centre sites, where at least 180 homes could be delivered, and subject to funding, we propose to deliver up to 50% of that scheme as affordable housing. So that would be subject to homes income funding, but at least a minimum policy position of 45. And there's also a budget request to take these sites through to planning, plus a smaller feasibility budget request for town centre master planning around the water gardens, car parks. The investment team is continually reviewing the portfolio of land, and has also at this stage identified 7 future sites, and there's a 20,000 per scheme request in the investment plan for those as well. So in terms of the timeline, following cabinet approval, we would immediately commence detailed design and planning on the 2 named sites, Cherbounce and Civic, with a target to submit a planning application in the autumn. And at that point, we would come back with the detailed proposals to cabinet with all of the values fixed, and including a recommendation to dispose of the site from the council to the investment partnership, and targeting a planning approval in the spring and the site acquisition. So just to go on to the specific cabinet ask. So cabinet will be asked to approve the inaugural investment plan of the investment partnership, to agree to annual reporting from the partnership to cabinet commencing 2027, to delegate authority to the strategic director for place to undertake activities within the plan and draw down the funds as outlined. And there's a total budget request to take the schemes to planning of 732,875. So just to be clear, that's 50% of the budgets, split 50-50 between the 2 partners, and the individual budgets broken down by scheme can be seen there. There's also an ongoing annual operating budget for the council of 95,000, so a total ask being 827,875. And yeah, that's all for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Do we have any questions from the floor? So, Councillor Santa Maria.
Thank you, Chair. I think overall it's a good plan. I think it's a good idea and a positive way forward, and I fully support the use of the Civic Centre site. I have, as ward councillor, I have some concerns about the development of the Cherbounce site. I'm happy to take this conversation offline later, but I will just outline my concerns. It's a small green space, but it is a green space near to a lot of existing residential properties, and also near I think for the number of dwellings, it just seems, I don't see how you fit that many on without it being incredibly squashed, and also losing all of the green space that's there now. I might, I would be interested to see if it's possible to reduce that number. In the section regarding the water gardens, would like to know what the plan is if the health campus does go ahead, because my understanding was that the only way really that we were going to be able to provide sufficient parking was by using that area, and also potentially building further on the either the existing structure or building a new structure on the other part of the car park. And in this section on the possible development of other sites in the future, that the lease is not going to be extended for the questions/concerns.
Can I just jump in and state that we are currently discussing the workings of the investment partnership, and while I think that there is definitely a question to officers as to why these sites have been selected to be the first ones rather than rather than other potential sites, actual discussions about what those sites would be used for and things is probably not right for this forum. It's so with that, I'll ask officers to respond to what they can.
Okay, so take Cherry Bounce first then. So, yeah, I obviously appreciate what you're saying. So, but this site is allocated for housing in both the currently adopted local plan and also the draft local plan. So, obviously, because of that, there is an assumption in favour of housing development. And in terms of the numbers, so the site is a constrained site, and actually the local plan allocation, from our work that we've done to date, does look ambitious in terms of fitting that amount of dwellings in. So the 50 to 60 that we're talking about in terms of the feasibility is a reduction from the, I can't remember if it was 80 or 90 in the local plan. So some of your point there, I suppose, I'm agreeing with in terms of how that can be fitted on site. So yeah, I'd have those points and happy to have a discussion around. I mean, clearly any development would be landscape led, which is a popular buzzword developers would say, but it's true. There's obviously certain principles and biodiversity net gain that's important as part of any development. So that would be part of it, but it is seen as a good site to deliver on the aspirations of the partnership because it is an allocated housing site. Water gardens, I didn't go into much detail on what we're looking at there. So the work on the water gardens is at this stage to support the wider Hemel Hempstead Town Centre master plan, of which, as you point out, the proposed NHS Health Campus is part of that. So the parking requirement that's needed for that will be considered as part of that work. So just to be clear, we're not suggesting at all that we're looking to reduce car parking. We'd be understanding the car parking needs as part of that. But how the car parking is currently structured, obviously we've got some surface level parking. There is potential, without going too far down the detail, there is potential to intensify parking in certain areas which would free up development space, which could be for both housing and leisure uses. So there is an aspiration for leisure use towards the more end, the south side of that.
So potentially something like building on the surface level one at the moment and then building additional stories onto
it is something we would look at, but we haven't undertaken any of the structural surveys associated with that. But the purpose of including it in the investment plan is to allow the budget to support the wider town centre master plan work, to be able to start that. So whilst that's identified as a priority site which could support the aspirations of the partnership, it's not as clear cut as Cherry Bounce and Civic, and it needs to be sympathetic to wider projects and programmes around that are working with it. So yeah, I think that was all your questions, apart from the medium term site, which I think is part 2, isn't it?
Okay, we'll cover that when we're in part 2. So Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, this really all hinges on 2 things: finance and the market. How important are Homes England to this? If they don't come up with anything, is it dead in the water?
So we obviously, I will reiterate that at the moment we're at feasibility stage, and the financial appraisal position is subject to change as part of the emerging scheme design, which will dictate that. The Cherry Bounce appraisal does not assume any external grant funding. It's a policy compliant scheme, and the affordable housing is secured through a Section 106 planning agreement. The viability on Civic is challenging. So that scheme, to put it fairly bluntly, at the moment would not come forward without grant funding. So it relies on grant funding. Obviously, that is a risk to us, but we're already in conversation with Homes England. We have a very good track record of delivering Homes England grant-funded schemes, and we, obviously actively engaging to do what we can to be able to secure that funding. We think that the partnership model is an attractive model, and Homes England should look to support it in terms of delivering on the wider aspiration to deliver 1.5 million homes. It's a deliverable site. So
if I can try paraphrasing that combined with sort of what you said previously on this, I'm reading that as being the Dacorum Investment Partnership can happen without Homes England, but a number of the schemes that we are looking at would not be feasible without it. So, but the investment scheme, there's no commitment for a certain level of stuff. It can exist for one small project, or it could exist for a lot of others. So,
Yeah.
you know, we could do this and definitely do one scheme that you were already saying, even if Homes England weren't coming on board. Is that?
Yes, in essence, yeah. It works better with more, but one is better than none. Yeah.
Okay.
Just to add to that, that was part of when we were looking to choose our investment partner. One of the considerations was around their strategic partnership relationship with Homes England and Hill Group, as well as ourselves having a good relationship. They are an established strategic partner of Homes England, so the two together are in a strong position, we believe, to take that forward.
Thanks. Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just basically on the market, because clearly we're relying on these places to sell to make a return. So clearly the market's difficult. You've got high interest rates and they don't appear to be really coming down significantly. Clearly never at the case where they were 5 years ago and it was free money at 0%, 0.1% base rates. So that's a difficult situation. But you've also got is there any provision here for actual council housing, or is it just purely selling?
No, so first, in terms of the first point, obviously sales risk is part of the risk log of the investment partnership, and the decision on the actual tenure mix is not decided and will emerge as part of the detailed design and planning. But the current thinking for assuming that Civic can accommodate a higher level of affordable housing than policy is precisely because of the sales risk. And actually, if we can secure Homes England grant funding, that's the better thing to do than deliver additional market sale flats, which, as you point out, may or may not, have some difficulty in selling all of them. So yeah, it's not all about sales. So each site will be aiming for at least minimum policy compliant affordable housing, and that should be at appropriate rental levels as well. So we would obviously look to make that genuinely affordable. There's a part of the answer to that question is who ultimately takes on the affordable housing. So it's not the ultimate bidder and recipient of the affordable homes is not decided at this point. If it was the council, we'd clearly want to make them as affordable as possible. But also commercially, that would impact our financial position. So that comes down to the trading off the three objectives here of trying to make a return to reinvest in future schemes, whilst also delivering the right type and quantum of affordable housing.
Yeah, well, I always take the view affordable housing isn't council housing. It's not specifically council housing. This is housing associations that are. It's 80% of the.
But it doesn't have to be 80%. So we'd look to, if the council was to acquire the homes, we'd look to make those as affordable as possible. So at 60% of market rent or a social rent, clearly that's better for one aspiration of the council. But it also means that it takes longer for that to pay back in terms of the council's cash flow. So that's a balancing act of the considerations, and there's no decision point at this point. It's balancing those at the time that the scheme is finalised.
Just got one more, and that's it's the main danger. It's quite front loaded. You've got quite a £827,000 going straight in. So basically, we're front loading it with cost and uncertainty down the line. But that's just a statement.
I can make a comment. Yeah, I'm happy for others to come in as well. But just in terms of that, so the approval of the funds and the investment plan is not free range to go and spend all that money on day one. So as part, what sits behind this is governance, which includes a shareholder steering group, which has members from each party as well as key officers who will be approving the budget. We're also having stage gates at each REBA stage, which is the development architect stage gate. So at each stage, we have to demonstrate that we're still looking to deliver something that meets the objectives outlined. And if it doesn't, it's abortive, but it's better to have abortive costs at the earlier stage gain at the end. So what we're not saying at this point is all of this money will be spent, and then we'll come and say at the end of this, there's no viable scheme. That would have to come out a lot earlier in the process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Guest.
Thank you. I have two questions here. The first one relates to the water garden side. Is if it is progressed, what would happen to the historic Jellicoe water gardens? That's the first question. It's probably the easier one. And the second one relates to local government reorganisation. I understand that once the order is signed, which is anticipated to be in October this year, then Dacorum, whilst it still exists, will only be allowed to spend a relatively small sum, which I believe to be as low as £1,000, as low as £10,000, as low as £10,000 without government approval. So how would this affect the Dacorum Investment Partnership?
So on the Jellicoe Garden, so the proposal is only to look at the car parks itself, not the park. So I don't know how close it would get to that, but it wouldn't be looking to develop on the water gardens themselves. It's within the existing footprint of the car park that's kind of in the initial scope. So hopefully that is that point. So,
Yeah, that's correct here.
On the LGR question,
Nigel, are you able to take that?
You want me to? Yeah, just to talk to the sums. It's actually 1 million capital and 100,000 revenue, and you require the authority from the shadow authority. So it's not quite as low as you read.
And just to add to that, obviously the intent would be to, before the structural change order comes in, to have progressed to a good stage that we understand, you know, if there are key decisions that need to be made, obviously that wouldn't fetter later down the line, but that would allow us to continue to progress. So I think we're mindful of the timeline, and as we go through developing designs, we'll keep that in mind. And also, I suppose the last point there being, while you have to go and request something, it's not an automatic, you can't do anything more if it makes sense and there's a good business case for it. So it just adds another layer to decision making. But very good points that, yeah, the project will keep in mind as we move forward.
Sorry, thank you. Does that cover both of yours?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
I may have misunderstood that, but need authority from the shadow authority. Is that must be next October then, mustn't it? Not this October, because there won't be a shadow authority yet this October.
From the point that the structural changes order is approved, it's likely that there'll be written into that order restrictions on spending without approval. So yeah, from that point, you would have to get approval.
But if the shadow authority doesn't exist yet, maybe getting into the weeds here, but if the shadow authority doesn't exist yet, how do you get authority from it?
But the shadow authority would exist from the point of the structural changes. And there'll be, it's likely there'll be a joint committee set up which effectively run the shadow authority until we get through to elections in the following May.
So just for clarity, at the moment, the timeline is saying that there will be a shadow authority issued by committee around October, November this year on current government timelines.
So some of us will get full as our shadow councillors even before an election. Right, Councillor Deacon.
Yes, and sorry, it might be my misunderstanding, and especially because point 3 was about giving delegation powers. Before anything is built or changed, would it still come to another scrutiny committee before that happens?
Yes, so there's obviously the stage gates that we talked about. So we're going as far as well, we're coming back to cabinet, currently predicting September with the detail behind these sites. So ahead of going to cabinet, my understanding is it comes to this committee before.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you very much. That reassures me.
With the build cost?
Yeah.
Is it related or?
Yes. Okay. Sort of. basically about governance. Yes, an annual report here and cabinet. I would prefer it was a bit more frequent, maybe every 6 months, rather than annually. Things get rolling.
I would suggest that we note that, and this will have to go to officers and to William. The amount of activity that the investment partnership is undergoing will probably drive that. I think that, you know, if we've got sort of 2 schemes going in the first year, there's probably not going to be that much to talk about. But yeah, if we've got 5 or 6 schemes going at the same time, we'll want frequent reporting.
Could I just come in? Yes, if we were, for example, to come back in 6 months' time, that would be prior to us having the detailed scheme for these 2. So it wouldn't probably say a great deal more than we would be saying now. That wouldn't also be going anyway to this committee and cabinet as part of the detail of these schemes, which is why we suggested the annual investment plan. But yeah, we've seen.
See how it goes.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Stevens.
Matt, thanks. Nice clear report here. I was interested in the comment there about growing the housing stock. I'm concerned if it's going to be our housing stock. What's the state of play in terms of right to buy? How do we prevent the houses falling under right to buy? Is it feasible?
You don't know automatically now, do you? I have to take that on.
No, I mean, the current arrangements in respect of our introductory and then on to secure tenancies mean that once tenants have achieved the relevant qualifying periods, then they are able to look to apply to purchase their home. There obviously are indicated time periods where a tenant is able to qualify and then seek the required amount of discount, but there are limitations as to how we can restrict that with any new build home, unfortunately.
Can I just narrow that down? Are there any tools that would be available to an investment partnership that are not available to any other vehicle that would that would increase our housing stock, that would be any different on protections?
There's obviously different forms of tenancy and tenure, but it wouldn't necessarily support the aspiration around it being council stock if that was the case. So, and also the discounts have reduced as well, haven't they? So it's still attractive for somebody to do, but it's not as attractive as it was before.
Right.
Any follow-up?
I think we look forward to a change of legislation, I think.
Do I have any further questions on the floor before I look to move to part 2? No, I'll take that resounding silence. So thank you very much. So now I formally move that we exclude press and public, and we go to the extra special part of the report.
I think, Chair, it's just a question if anybody's got any questions in relation to the Part 2 elements that
Okay. Councillor Leakin.
Yeah, the only thing that I can add is you've named some, but there's some others to be identified in the future. Is that right? When will we be notified on what those are?
So the future sites are actually identified in the confidential Appendix A investment plan itself.
Sorry, I missed.
So what we're saying on those 7 sites is we haven't done as detailed work at this stage. So we're not saying they definitely are going to come forward. We're saying that they are the current sites of interest for future opportunities in the medium to long term. That list may change. We may come back with the investment plan update in a year's time, and some of them have come off without being developed. That's possible. And others may be added, but we're just giving an indication that these 7 sites are of interest and do have development.
I've just seen the list. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. Do we have any further questions? Okay. Thank you for the presentation. That is noted. And we will move on to agenda item 9, community governance review. And come to Catherine.
Yes, just to say that this report sets out the details of what's involved in the community governance review with draft terms of reference included. I'll hand over to Mark and Michelle to summarise the contents. Following this committee's review, obviously the proposals will then need to go forward to Cabinet and Council.
Thank you, Catherine. Just have a few slides just to summarise the key elements of the report. So we're just going to give an overview of the process for a community governance review and to outline the key decisions that Council will be required to take if we are to approve the CGR going forward. The detail is set out in the report. The report also has the terms of reference proposed for the CGR, and we'll be just asking members if they've got any specific feedback on those terms of reference. So in terms of what a CGR community governance review is, it's a process under the Local Government and Public Involvement in Health Act. It allows councils to review parish arrangements to seek to improve local governance. It involves quite significant consultation with residents and other stakeholders, which I'll explain a little bit more about through the slides. So it can involve creating a new parish council, or town council as it may be termed. It can look at abolishing parish councils, and it can look at changing and reviewing existing boundaries as well. If the council is minded to proceed with a CGR, further analysis would be required in terms of councillor numbers, warding patterns, timings for elections to ensure fair representation across the board. For this CGR, excuse me, my voice is going. We are considering potentially a new parish council for the unparished areas of Hemel Hempstead, and also includes small parts of Nash Mills, Bourne End and Feldon. The process does involve the creation of more than one town or parish council, or changes to existing boundaries as well. CGRs can be initiated either by councils themselves or through a valid petition from local residents. But what we're looking at here is a process where the council commences the process themselves, and eventually would require a full council decision if we are to proceed to a CGR. There are some statutory requirements which councils have to look at when they're approving a CGR to go forward. The review and the outcome has to be reflective of the identities and interests of the community of that area. And the guidance talks about having a shared vision and sense of belonging for the area concerned. The key is to look at effective and local government, and it's really about delivering services economically and giving a democratic voice at that most local level. In terms of overall context, we're obviously going through local government review at the moment. There was some early guidance in 2010 which suggested the council shouldn't really be going through a CGR if you've got widespread government review going on at the time. However, we've seen develop through the Devolution and Empowerment Bill new structures introduced like neighbourhood governance and area committees, and that's the way the government certainly sees filling that local void. But they also see a key role for parish councils to play as well going forward. And the key point really here is that there is no statutory prohibition starting a CGR as we go through an LGR process. As many of you will know, there are a number of case studies and authorities, particularly within Hertfordshire, who are going through a CGR process at the moment, looking at creation of town councils in their areas. Just a few highlighted there, which you'll probably be aware of. The report will highlight there is a need and there will be a request if this goes forward to Cabinet and Council for a budget for the process of circa £100,000 is what we believe that would be needed to take the council through the full review process. In terms of that process, once council approves the decision, if it does, following scrutiny through here, through Cabinet, we would seek approval of the terms of reference, and the terms of reference will focus, as I say, on the unparished areas of Hemel Hempstead, which will cover the wards noted above there and set out in the report. It will also need to look at external boundaries of adjacent parish councils, because there may need to be a requirement to incorporate some areas within those adjacent parish councils. So that would all be part of the review. We make no decisions at this stage as to what that might look like. That's all open for comment and views before we form any proposals. The process, if council approves the terms of reference to go forward and commence a CGR, there'll be extensive consultation with residents and other stakeholders based on that feedback. Utilising the Electoral Review Committee, we will develop more detailed proposals, and then they will, once they're approved, they will go out for further consultation as well. So there's lots of opportunities for stakeholders and residents to give feedback and parish councils to give their views on what's the appropriate setup should be. As always, we're slightly complicated by the LGR process at the moment. And if the council wants to retain full control of the process so that it can make the final order, that does need to be completed before the transitional period starts, which is essentially when the structural changes order is approved. So we anticipate that gives us a 7 to 8 month period to proceed through to final council approval. We have roadmap that through, and we think that's achievable, and we sought some views of a specialist consultant who thinks that's achievable within the time we've got. Alternatively, Dacorum would start the process, and it would be for the new unitary authority to complete it. As we know, if we do create a new parish council, there will be a precept levied on residents to cover the services provided and the operation costs of that parish council. There's some figures in the report in terms of what that could look like, but it very much depends on the services that the parish council provides going forward as to what that might be. So appreciate any feedback committee have on the general principle of starting a CGR, and in particular the terms of reference which are set out in the report, but open to any questions.
Councillor Guest.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. The first one relates to stakeholders. Do we have an idea who those stakeholders would be? That's the first question. The second one is that one of the services that can be passed down to a town or parish council is listed as street lighting. That aside from the Dacorum housing lights, then street lighting is the Highways Authority responsibility, the county responsibility. So before LGR, how could street lighting be passed down to a town or parish council?
Yes, so the first question around stakeholders, so that will, a letter will go out to all residents within the unparished areas. We will be consulting all the parish councils within the borough, in particular those adjoining the unparished areas. There will be a social media campaign. There will be notification to businesses, community associations. I'm just looking at the list that Michelle's got. political parties, the MP, and some other boards that represent different parts of the community in the area. So it's quite a wide consultation list. In terms of the services, that would be very much for the parish council to determine, and it depends on what services are devolved down from the unitary authority. So I don't wish to really make any judgment as to exactly what that would look like at this stage. It's just that there would be an opportunity for the unitary to devolve those various different services down to the parish council.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not entirely convinced this is the way to go, but if this is something that is going to be set in train, there are a whole bunch of issues that need to be resolved at some point, and you've mentioned a lot of those in the presentation. One interesting thing came up at the scrutiny meeting last night, and I think most members thought I was being facetious, but actually I actually meant it. And the question is, would it be possible, as part of the CGR, to contemplate setting up new parish councils in the different parts of the Hemel Gardens Communities project? Because those residents don't exist yet, so we wouldn't actually have to consult the residents, which is an interesting part of it. But is that a possibility legally, or is that something that's kind of cuckoo as it sounds?
I think the challenge with the Hemel Garden Communities project is it goes beyond Dacorum's boundary, and at present it's covered by a number of different parish councils. So whilst we can cover the currently unparished areas of Dacorum, we're not going to be able to extend beyond our boundaries because that's not legally feasible.
But within our boundary? Because the Hemel Gardens community is actually made up of identifiable groups of development. It would be interesting if they were able to even come up with names for those communities to actually enable them to have parish councils as part of this process, which would allow a really head start. I mean, it was an issue that came up under the future stewardship of the maintenance of the development, but that's another story another day. I just wondered, I'm just doing a thought experiment here, is that something that's a possibility, something that could be considered or not?
Yeah, I mean, what we will generally take account of developments coming forward within the next 5 years, and we'll look at population projections for those areas before we start looking at things like warding, and potentially you could have more than one parish council, I suppose, legally. So we'll look at all those in the next stage. My feeling with Hemel Garden Communities is it's probably a bit further forward, so it might be for a future review to look at that when the changes are on the ground.
Councillor Stevens.
Right. Now, just picking up on your facetious comment, one of the key points about it is that if you're going to have a new parish council, there are no electors there, right? And since we're trying to make sure that your parishes are even numbered or whatever it is, if they don't exist, they don't exist. So nice try, but it ain't working. Can we come back now to CGR itself? No. The terms of reference. I know we're focusing on the unparished areas, but this gives us an opportunity to do some tidying up. The unparished area bordering on Nash Mills, and I think it's what is BAA. We've got some very strange squiggles down there against Leverstock Green, which need to be tidied up.
BAA and BAB.
Yep. And the other one that I just want to flag up is that there's a bit between North Church, which is JA, and Castle, the Castlewood in Berkhamsted, where one road, the only way to access it is if you come through Berkhamsted. It's not actually in North Church Parish, so that's a bit of tidying up in the future. Since we did the local government review, which it sort of arrested last year, it helped us redefine some wards, in particular, Apsley and Cornwall. so that it became much more even. And if we're thinking in terms of the numbers into the future, that work will stand us in good stead because it tells us what the projected populations are going to be in all these wards. So it would help us when we redefine what we're going to be doing here. Just flag that up because splitting aptly so that we have Boxmoor defined in a more sensible way would make sense in the future anyway.
Okay, I mean, I think they're all things we can look at through the next stage. I mean, what I would say when you start talking about areas such as North Church is we do have to try and keep this review somewhat limited. We're not presenting this as an opportunity to tidy up every issue across the borough. That can be done at a future point, but due to the time we've got, this does need to be focused, otherwise it will just become a bit.
Well, that's a trivial item. The whole principle is undertaking the CGR at this point so that we are ready should LGR go ahead.
Could I just interject as a possible solution? While I can understand that CGR and the communications that are being proposed at the moment are going to be focused on the unparished ward, can we get assurance that any submissions that are received across the borough for anything, whether they are to talk about existing parishes or changes, can be formally recorded and therefore tabled to be actioned on, even if they can't be. If we can get that assured, then it kind of means that the existing parish councils can engage with their residents directly and feed that back through.
Yes, I sort of limit what I say though a little bit because we're not opening up the process to a full consultation of all the currently parished areas, so they won't necessarily get that information. I mean, the parish council itself could come back with some issues that it's aware of and things that they might like tidying up in the future. But as I say, it's not going to be a full consultation of every resident.
Well, as in DBC won't reach out to those people, but let's imagine that this happens and through the social media, let's say that you've got sort of 100 people in North Church responding in. All I'm saying is, can we get an undertaking that those will be formally recorded and possibly summarised? We're not saying that DBC has to sort of commit to a time frame of doing something with it, but we get that, we record it, that can be passed on to the new authorities, but that people will feel that they're being listened to on that. Okay, right, sorry, I jumped in front of Councillor Williams.
So, yes, thank you, Chair. I was just going back to Councillor Anderson's point, and before we set off on creating a new parish council for Hemel Garden communities, I think I'm right in saying that the entirety of Hemel Garden communities in Dacorum are already in the Great Gadsden parish. So Hemel Garden communities proposals are already in a parish. So before we start thinking about changing that, I think we ought to be mindful of that. I'm conscious, of course, that 5,000 properties in Great Gadsden is going to make a significant difference to the operation of Great Gadsden Parish Council. From a very small parish to a significant and quite well-resourced town council, but it is parish. So I think that's important to note before we set hair running there.
Councillor Gale.
Yes, I mean, this is all taking place against the backdrop of a considerable amount of uncertainty with local government review. I mean, we don't know for sure what a new unitary authority is going to look like yet, how many councillors it's going to be, what it's going to be like, and what we're proposing is asking residents what sort of government, what sort of underneath local governments they want, when they don't even know what it's going to look like. They don't know what they're measuring it against. So, and it seems to me that local government review, when that takes place, that's going to affect, that's likely to affect the answers that they give. I mean, you give a different answer depending on the circumstances. So I'm wondering whether it's worth actually waiting before we start asking residents what they want in this uncertain place, uncertain situation. wait until we've actually, we know what we're dealing with, we know what the backdrop is, because we might commit, or we might ask residents something, and they might think, well, this looks good now, and then everything changes. We're throwing all the cards up, and it seems to me we're creating a whole load more uncertainty than is necessary. Wouldn't it be better to actually just do one thing and build it one thing at a time? We'll have the local government review, and then we start deciding what needs to go underneath once we know what that local government review looks like. That's the first question. The second question is sort of not only tangentially related to it. What's the difference? I mean, I'm curious, what's the difference between a local government review, a community governance review initiated by the council and one that's initiated by a petition? Is there just no difference at all? So if there's one initiated by a petition, you've got no choice. You've got to go ahead. So is part of the reason for us initiating it to stop, sort of jump ahead of a petition, of it being initiated by a petition? I don't know. I'm just curious about that. I just want to know why we're doing this now, what the rush is before we actually sort out local government review. We're building something against a background we don't know what it is.
And I think that's very much the choice of members, that we're putting 2 members for consideration. I mean, what I would say is there's a window of opportunity here where the council, Dacorum, has got control of the process. If it's done before the structural changes order gets approved, once it's been approved, that decision moves out of Dacorum's hands. So it's a kind of a question of, do you start now or do you wait? And that's one for members to
but it seems like we're trying to overreach beyond the grave, by trying to sort of do something. You know, we will have we're trying to stamp our legacy on something which will have to exist after, you know, it won't be Dacorum anymore. And it seems a little bit to be doing that.
Thank you. I don't think we've had quite enough drama in our Finance and Resource Committee, so I quite like the language that's being used.
Councillor Stevens had his hand up, so Chair.
No, just checking, was there a response from officers to any of Councillor Gale's points?
Yeah, there was a second point on the process. Essentially, it's the same. It can be started one or 2 ways, by the petition or by the council itself. We're certainly not trying to jump ahead of a petition. I have no idea that a petition might be coming forward, so this is just something for the council to consider.
Okay, I'm afraid I've got a few people in the list now. So Councillor Deacon next.
No, so I was pointing out that.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sorry.
Right, okay.
Sorry.
Well, okay, that's bad because I've only got Councillor Griffin now. So Councillor Stevens next then.
Right, thank you, no. I think the reason why it makes sense to do a CGR now is that once we go down the route of LGR, there is nothing left in the unparished areas of democratic accountability at the local level. And what we're trying to do is bring into place a way in which our local residents have an opportunity to have a greater say on what takes place in their community. Because on the one level, we're going to have high-level unitary government, but nothing between there and the man in the street. Okay.
Person.
We are talking, we're going to person in the street. Right, okay. But the point is, the government is talking about neighbourhood councils, etc. Nowhere have they talked about giving them power to be able to influence what they're doing, apart from a forum. Forums don't work. We've tried them already in days gone by here. They're talking shops, but if you've got no budget, you can't get anything done, which is one of the key strengths of having a parish council in place. So we're giving our residents the opportunity to decide how they influence the future. If they don't want it, they don't want it.
Hold on, we're going to keep this on to questions. While I'm very much in favour of debate, and I don't want to show any preferential treatment to any councillors, but Councillor Stevens is my lift home. I don't want to waste officers' time by us having a cross-floor debate. So if we can try to have, we all have different opinions and we all have valid concerns, but if we can focus them into the staff. So with that said, Councillor Williams, please.
Thank you, Chair. Music to my ears, Councillor Gale. We've said all the way along, and the view of the Conservative group is that this is a process that should take place when we know what the structure of local government is in Hertfordshire. Whatever that form is, you will still have your local councillors. You could argue, but you could turn Councillor Stevens' argument on its head and say, the moment you have one county council representing 12,000 people in a population of 1 million or 1.2 million, and now you will have councillors taking those same decisions, but for a population of 600,000 or 400,000, whatever it might be. So effectively, a lot of that decision making, a lot of that spending is coming closer in smaller units than it currently is, and you'll still have your local councillors. So we certainly, as a group, would support this process being put back. We appreciate that that may not be the majority view of the council, so we're fully engaged in the process, but if there is the option for this review to be put on hold until such time as the structure of local government, because there's a very big difference between a Dacorum and St Albans council and a half of Hertfordshire council, and how that operates, and its geography and its localness to its residents. And councillor ratios are significantly different in those options. We don't know what the outcome of that will be. So if there is a view amongst the majority of councillors that this process ought to be delayed, then we would absolutely support that.
Thank you. Councillor Greenfield.
Yes, thank you. I have a question on the language that we're using, and I'll preface this with I understand that not all of our existing parish councils have a parish church, but given the secular and multicultural nature of the community within Hemel Hempstead, should we not call it a town council rather than a parish council?
So in law, you create a parish council, but then the council itself can decide to adopt a different term so that it can then call itself a town council if that's what it wants to do. So it's kind of a bit of a legal nuance, but eventually it could call itself a town council.
So in the survey that goes out to residents, can we call it parish/town?
I think that's what it does. Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, this is probably a point of clarification. We have, once it's all sorted out, we have the unitary councils, evidently the council tax. Now, it's not going to go down, but you're going to charge a precept. So they've got these new parish councils, and say Children, Warner's End and others, are going to have a precept. So really, our residents are going to pay more for what they'd already been getting previously. Is that not correct?
Well, I'm just going to throw into that as a side, because that's going to double up with the items we were previously discussing about parish and town grants. So the services that are provided by the parish and town councils are up to the parish and town councils. So they may choose to deliver more services than they are currently getting, or they may not. Now, I'll just go on to kind of my personal view on this. The beginnings of the CSR process are mostly to ask the high-level questions, which is exactly that. If you currently are in an unparished area, do you want to have a parish knowing that you're going to have to pay for it? We can begin that question without knowing everything about LGR. I completely agree that there is stuff about what's going to happen with that you've got to know the LGR part beforehand. But some of those big questions you can ask immediately now. I think most people are going to want to be asked the question. And believe me, if we go out there and 20% of people say, I want to be a parish area, and 80% of people say, no, that costs more money, I want to save it. That pretty much is our answer. But the whole point is that those people would have made the answer. So that's my personal view as why we would want to reach out. Because we don't need to know everything at this point to know what people, to find out what people want. And I think it's an important enough thing to ask them. And that's coming from somebody that's in a parish area. But, go, since Councillor Gale started that, you could have the right to reply.
I'm not going to say any more. I just sort of Googled the word parish, and it's not a religious word. It's just parish it just means the local parochial word, and it's the other way around. The parish church comes from the fact that it's the local church, so it's not even particularly religious about the word parish, as far as I can tell.
It was only because in pre-Victorian times, the only place to have the meetings was in the church, and that's why the name parish. It's got not a religious connotation.
Yeah, but regardless, there is well, of the history, it is a legal sort of side at the moment, and whether we agree with it or not, that is the way that this country works. So we could look at getting around P's to change it. We could change lots of the sort of sexist language around titles and stuff as well. But I don't really think we can sort it out at this committee meeting. Councillor Guest.
Thank you. Then just to clarify that the parish in this context is a civil parish, which is nothing to do with a church parish, either Church of England or Roman Catholic. It is a civil parish, which is the lowest level of local government.
Agreed.
The first tier of local government.
Yes. Okay. Do we have any further questions on our CGR item? No. Okay. Sorry, I need to jump back and just check if we are taking decision on that one or if we are just noting the proposal.
I think it's just a note.
It is, okay.
To seek views, yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much for the report. And we now move on to agenda item 10. The Constitution update, and we'll come back to Mark.
Thank you. Chair, I won't go through the report in detail, but in very quick summary, my role as monitoring officer is to reflect on any issues the council's had procedurally, make sure the Constitution is clear and understandable to everybody. So I do this on a regular basis. The report proposes some changes in terms to make the process for appointing and removing the leader clearer. Most of this is already in the Constitution already, but it's kind of split in different areas, so we're just trying to put it together. The report recommends changes to make the Constitution gender neutral throughout, which it doesn't at the moment. It clarifies some issues around appointment of chairpersons and appointment of committee members as well. So, Chair, I'm going to open it up for anybody, any comments on the report.
Thank you very much. I'll take the report as read. Do I have any feedback or questions from the floor? No. Councillor Guest.
Thank you. I suppose this will have me address you as chair rather than chairman, but I'm delighted that if he or she so wishes, that chair can be addressed as chairman by the committee. Because for 6 years, I was chairman of development management here, and I'm currently the vice chairman, which I'd like to continue to be addressed as, please, because I'm not made of wood or plastic. I've got 2 legs and will retard anyone who dares try to sit on me.
Well, I'm perfectly happy being called a chair, but I'm not sure if that's going to be taken as inviting people to come and sit on my lap. Right. Not really sure a response is needed to that one. Thank you. Do I have any other comments? Councillor Gale.
Yes, just about the appointment of the new leader, the nominations process. Am I right that this is still going to be the case that nominations can be just made at the meeting itself with no notice in advance, and that there need not be any limit to the number of nominations there are.
Correct.
So that could result in quite an interesting situation, couldn't it, where we know that there's the leader of the council can be removed with plenty of notice, so that happens, and then you get a meeting at which no one knows until the actual time of the meeting itself who the nominees are going to be for the leader. Is that a intention that is desirable?
Well, I think what we see in practice is that people are aware of nominations before they come forward to see if there's support, but the process does allow, and always has done, nominations on the evening without prior notice. So it's arguably the most democratic approach to allow as many nominations as people want to put forward, and then there's votes on each one that comes forward. So we weren't seeking to limit that number.
Councillor Greenfield.
I'd just like to say that I fully support making it gender inclusive and gender neutral throughout. If at any point we do say he/she, can we also remember that we should say they as well? Thank you.
I'm just wondering if there is, sorry, I'm jumping in on the point while we're talking gender neutrality. Are there any parts in the Constitution that we need to alter with regards to the titles of the mayor? Because obviously I know we have a history of using a Madam Mayor, which luckily we're not using at the moment. It just might be worth making sure we cleanse that. Same point.
Can I say, if I call her Madam Mayor, do I get censored?
That will be completely up to the mayor herself. But the point is that trying to make a baseline which is as gender neutral as possible has the least chance of causing any offence.
So you can call somebody the mayor?
You just call them mayor.
Yeah.
Councillor Gale.
I would just say mayor rather than madam or mayor.
The mayor in the Constitution, it just says mayor.
Mayor, I would say mayor. If I remember, but I usually forget. I'm chair by mistake. But just a question: the voting procedure. What's changed? Would you mind just reminding us what's changed? What's new in this from what was really? Because I did look at this last time we had the leadership election, and I remember thinking there was a hole in it, but I couldn't remember. I can't remember now what exactly it was.
It was quite difficult to read and understand, quite frankly. But what we've tried to do is reflect where we did actually get to in the end, that we thought was the constitutional position, and just try to explain it a little bit more clearly. So it doesn't change anything in terms of the actual voting process. It just tries to write it in a little bit more plain English, as best we could.
Because I seem to remember that it looked like there wasn't a provision for two candidates, I think, or something, or not explicit one. It looked like
two candidates is easy. Three candidates.
We've done there. I think I understand the point you were making. It just wasn't clear, but hopefully it is now.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, any further questions? No? Okay, we will now move on to agenda item 11, which is the commercial strategy and programme update. And I've got Ben's name first. So we come to Ben.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. This is first of two very quick reports that will be presented to committee. The first of which is the commercial strategy and programme update. I think the report is relatively short and sets out the work that has been undertaken during 25-26 and what will be delivered during that period, and also commercial opportunities that have been identified within the current year that will be delivered from April 26. So the next financial year, and then some ongoing longer term commercial opportunities that the service is supporting. Happy to open the floor and ask any or respond to any questions that are raised.
That's what is read. Any questions? You weren't kidding when you said it was going to be a quick item, but you did say you've got two, so we're going to move.
That was the long one.
Can I ask a question?
Well, I haven't put the title of the next one up, so I'll let you. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, right now. Section 3.5 on EV charging point.
Yes.
Income.
Yes.
Income to date, December, 47,980.
Yes.
Okay. Sounds promising. How does that compare with our original projections?
I don't have that information to hand, but I can certainly look at that and send that on to everyone in the committee.
Oh no, we've got an action item.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, absolutely, I can do that. It was a very slow start, and the predictions were slow start, and then ramp up as obviously the conventional petrol vehicles were phased out and were no longer made, and everyone was happily moving on to electric vehicles. So, and it's built over a 15 and 25-year period, which is the length of the leases. So yes, I will. I think I may actually have shared some of that information with you, William.
Myself, yeah.
Yes.
There's probably an emails.
So I think some sites, I think centrally, if I recall, some of the sites are on a par with where we thought they would be, or where the service provider thought they would be. Some of the sites that are more on the periphery, the usage hasn't been as strong as they would have liked. Ironically, the fast charge points, which are what everyone classes as slow, but the fast charge points are have performed much better than was expected, whereas the rapid charge points, certainly more on the periphery, haven't performed as well as, and that's down to customer choice. It's, you know, if you want to pay to charge rapidly, then that's great. But ultimately, if there are more areas than it's a destination, you're willing to park up for 3 or 4 hours and go and visit somewhere, then you'll pay a lower rate to charge your vehicle because it's taking longer. But I can absolutely send a report through, giving some of the data.
Thank you. Can I have a follow-up on this one?
You can. I don't have any other hands yet.
Right. St Johnswell Lane.
Yes.
We've got a number of bays there set out for EVs.
You do.
Any idea when those are likely to be made live?
29th of January is the day that site and the one outstanding site in Tring will be commissioned to become operational.
Oh, promising.
Is what I've been told. If it's not done by the 31st of January, then there are financial implications on the contractor. So they will, by hook or by crook, will make sure that it's done by the 29th.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Very pleased to hear that. Any further questions? No, so we will now move on to the. Oh, I'm sorry.
I did ask Councillor Stevens' very question myself. I found an email if you'd like to know.
Yep. And then you'll save Layla having to note it down on an action item. There we go.
I think what it says is there's a £55,000 shortfall last year, and in year 2 projections, it is going to be about 40,000 under projection.
About 50%. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That wasn't quite the question that was asked, but yeah, the usage is one thing. What's in our budget is something completely different. But yes.
And take up of electric vehicles is substantially behind what the government forecasts because of, partly because of lack of infrastructure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and I presume we are coming directly back to you for the commission and procurement strategy.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And again, thank you very much for the opportunity to present this report to you. Council must legally have a procurement strategy. As you will all be aware, the the Procurement Act 2023 was implemented this year, so there was new legislation in relation to public procurement. The government also published a national procurement policy statement, of which contracting authorities, us being one of those, must have regard to when exercising our procurement functions as required by Section 13 of the Procurement Act. The National Procurement Policy Statement has got one overarching objective, to deliver value for money, and that will be delivered through the delivery of three principal priorities, which are economic growth, social and economic value, and commercial capacity. And the Council's commissioning procurement strategy has been developed around these three priorities, to ensure that our approach looks at local issues as well as complying nationally. The strategy the strategy will guide officers to help to set context and to help make the right decisions when undertaking commissioning procurement activities. Happy to take any questions from committee.
Any questions or comments? Well, I'll just give what my little cynical comment. When we are talking about the section 2 on social and economic value, we don't have much context in that as to whether we're talking short term, medium term, or long term, and obviously there's going to be many times where those are in conflict with one another.
A valid point. I think what I would say in response is the strategy is not setting out to do everything for every single commissioning and procurement project. It helps to set direction, and then as part of each of the commissioning and procurement projects, we look at each of those. Some may be very short term, some may not be appropriate at all, and others absolutely may be very long term, depending on the value of the project, the type of project, so if it's a work, whether it's likely to generate employment opportunities that could become ongoing and sustainable, or whether it's actually we're going out and buying a product and we're looking at an environmental aspect that's really important for how that raw material is sourced. So that level of detail is left down to the project to go through the commissioning process and identify those.
Noted, but I'll just counter. When people use a strategy to justify a decision, organisations can fall into a pit. You get the point where somebody is saying, I have to go with the cheapest option because I was told to get the best economic value, even if somebody could quite easily say, that's not the best economic value over the long term. And it's trying to make sure that there is, that staff on the ground don't feel that they're forced to make a decision. They've got enough context in there so they can, as you say, justify it in the context of that decision itself. Okay. Any further? Councillor Guest.
Thank you. How would this strategy be affected by LGR?
So the strategy is only for 2026 to 2028. Once we have the structural change order that has been signed and we know who the shadow council will be, we will then start to look at developing processes, procedures, strategies to align with the authorities within that shadow council, so that come vesting day, we're very clear how we will approach our commissioning and procurement activities as a larger organisation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? No? Okay, thank you very much, Ben. We will bid you good night, and we'll move on to our next fun item, coming to Nigel for the 26-27 budget proposals.
So, good evening everybody, strap yourselves in. 65 slides coming your way. Hope nobody's got anywhere to go. I do jest in general. I'll be honest, this slide deck could have comfortably been 65 slides long, but hopefully I found the right middle ground if I can get my computer to work. So in December, we went through the draft 26-27 budget proposals with the committee and with wider membership as well from the other scrutiny committees. What I'm aiming to do in this session, along with the report that is in your pack, is give you an update in response to the local government finance settlement that, believe it or not, I couldn't believe it when I thought about it this morning, has been out for less than a month. It's been a very busy month, particularly with Christmas and New Year in there. And we'll go through what some of those changes are, a bit more of the background as to the rationale, because again, it's been a month since anybody talked about it, apart from myself, who's talked about it probably every day. So from that perspective, we'll go through that and some of the impact and what the current revised 26-27 draft budget aims to achieve. In terms of this session, we weren't looking to go through the whole budget again, just the changes that have happened in the last 4.5, 5 weeks. From that perspective, let's try and focus on those, although I can obviously take any questions that you have on the wider pack. In terms of the agenda, it looks quite long. I will whiz through some of this and then pick up any items from questions. One, we'll go through local government funding. There's an outcome of that in terms of additional funding, which we are now, in terms of administration, is now part of what we're calling the Stronger Futures programme for 26-27. The A to D in that category are items that we listed in the last scrutiny is new, and we'll go through that in a little bit more detail than you've got in your pack. And then section 3, just one slide on the changes proposed to reserves, which again are in your pack, and then budget setting next steps in terms of where we go from here, just for clarity for everybody. So local government funding, genuinely, I could talk for days and probably put you all to sleep very, very quickly. But just to refresh, in 2025, the government committed to what they called a fair funding review, which was a look at refreshing how local authorities are financed for the first time since 2013, 2014. Was it needed? Absolutely, because when they actually did the funding formula in 2013-14, they factored in certain things like damping that they would remove, and 12 years on, it is still in the formula. So it absolutely needed a full and frank refresh. Also, over that period of time, when you think about it, we've had COVID, we've had Russia, we've had superinflation at times. So a lot of reasons why looking at this and bringing a new formula forward. In terms of why it's definitely needed from a Dacorum perspective, we've had no certainty around funding because they've been jumping from pillar to post year on year. What this does now is this looks to kind of unwind all that and give us some certainty for the first time since kind of 2013 when we had a multi-year settlement. As part of that, the government is rolling in £56 billion of grants across 36 funding streams that were previously all different grants to be administered, which both from an officer and a member perspective made it very, very difficult. Everybody not understanding what the terms and conditions were of each grant. Going forward, we will have 2 lines. Very clear, very simple. I will be honest, it is brutally difficult to go from where we were before to where we are now, because they've taken some grants and said part of that is in there, but part of it isn't. We're not going to tell you which. So you're not going to get a this is where we were, this is where we're at, line for line description from me, I'm afraid, because it is not feasibly possible at this moment in time. But headline from a national perspective, this is the big pot for 28-29. You're looking at £84 billion being allocated across the whole sector. And what this table tries to outline is where we've gone from in 25-6 on the far left-hand side in terms of total funding to what we're projecting it to be at 28-29. So what the government is. The reason I put this slide up is there is a lot of conversation, particularly on social media, various different political parties around what the impact is of this funding review on local authority spending. Look at those numbers at the bottom, they're the key ones, that core spending power year-on-year change percentage. It is only a 5.7% increase year-on-year from 25-6 to 26-7. When you consider that council tax is a large proportion of that, it is not a big change in funding. The funding pot hasn't substantially changed for local authorities. All they've decided is how big your piece of that pie is. That's all that's changed. If you look at the far right-hand column of this table, you'll see that 75% of the growth in funding for local authorities over the next 3 years is the expectation of maximising council tax increases. So if you hear conversations around massive increases in funding, there has not been massive increases in funding. There is a increase, circa 25% over 3 years, which is not linked to council tax, but when you take into consideration inflation, and particularly some of those service areas like social care, you'll realise that actually it becomes very much a flat level playing field in terms of real terms changes over that period. Coming down to Dacorum, apologies, this should be a bit bigger. I thought we'd be in the main room as usual, so I will test people's eyesight late at night. This is the Dacorum position. On the left-hand side, this is everything that MHCLG said that we were receiving in one form or another in 25-6, and the provisional settlement is what we expect to achieve in 26-27. Just a little nod to the next 2 years, you'll notice in the next 2 years, our funding is only really going up by council tax. So we're looking at flat government funding, but an increase from a council tax base and council tax increases that are expected going forward. Coming back to the 26-27 budget, what does the provisional settlement do? It says that our overall funding year on year is increasing by a little over £1 million, of which, as we alluded to already, half of that is through council tax, which we did expect and did plan in terms of our model, because central government assumes all authorities will look at maximising council tax. So that is why local authorities look to take that level. That does leave us with a residual additional circa £500,000 in 26-7's draft budget that we didn't have and we didn't look at in December. And we'll come in a few slides as to what we're looking to spend that on. What I want to go through in section 2 is the key budget changes overall for the whole budget for 26-7. Now, the first 4 of these, A to D, are items that were listed in the December scrutiny papers, and item E is one that is in your pack and is new as a result of the local government finance settlement. What this is doing is outlining a new programme of work for the council in 26-27 with a title of Stronger Futures Programme at the moment. And we'll go through a little bit more detail on these areas. These areas are still a work in progress in some capacity, and in some areas we've got a little bit more of a firmed up idea. Over the next few weeks, before the start of the 26-27 financial year, the administration hopes to put a lot more meat on the bones of these, but hopefully you'll get a flavour over the next few slides of exactly what we're looking to do with these funds, the impact and the deliverability of that. So first of all, as levelled at the last scrutiny meeting, we've got locality neighbourhood improvements. This is around looking at public highways, street furniture, public spaces, and getting community engagement on how we can look to invest those funds, so circa 350,000 at the moment, to improve that public space, improve some of the public highways and deliver for local residents. And that's looking at that across Dacorum. It's not focused on a specific area. And again, at the moment, the ideas for that are still very much in their infancy, and that's something that will evolve working with stakeholders across the council. B is around neighbourhood centre focus. Now we say neighbourhood centres, this is not just the few arcades in Hemel, we're also looking at, we've got little high streets, I say little, Kings Langley, Burcow, Tring are also listed in there. So we are looking at all the major economic centres, if you want, is probably a better phrase in terms of what we're doing. At the moment, the Housing and Property Directorate, previously Place and Property, I think it was, I get confused, are looking at all potential investments that have been looked at over the last couple of years in these areas to see if there's anything that's more feasible now, more deliverable, or anything that we can go back to those communities and say, how would this work now that we've got some investment that we could look to put into that. Equally as part of that, some of you will be closer to this than others. We have the UK SPF, which was effectively part of the previous government's Levelling Up Fund, that ends in 25-26. They've done a lot of meanwhile use purposes in Hemel and various different projects over the last few years. We're looking at some of those, including some of that investment that is done with Herts County Council and other district partners on how we can look at investing that going forward to improve and enhance economic development over the next 12 months. So again, work in progress, but very much working at a pace at the moment. This one is probably fairly straightforward. We are in the process of commissioning external advisors to create a Hemel Town Centre master plan. with the emphasis being on speed, as well as delivering some outputs and outcomes on how we can support the Hemel Town Centre. The aim being to have this done in the first half of 2026, so we can feed back to members both on the outputs and direction, but also on potentially some investment that we put into the Hemel Town Centre. This one around capacity and feasibility, there are various projects which again different members will be aware of, working with different community and voluntary groups across the organisation, across Dacorum, to deliver certain projects. We're now looking to try and put some money into these to speed up some of these initiatives, partly to make sure that they happen prior to LGR, and partly because some of these projects, some of these proposals have been in discussion for a long period of time and really need some pump priming to happen. Some of these that have been mentioned, I'm not saying these that get listed, but Durham Lakes is one that's been around for a long time. So now it's a case of being able to maybe support how that goes forward or doesn't go forward in the future. How can we come to an optimum conclusion on some of those key areas that some of the stakeholders and voluntary groups want us to end? Now we're coming around to the final project. Now, as part of the overall programme, the reason this is tackling inequality and targeted intervention, the driver behind additional funding coming to Dacorum is because of significant change in the 54 formula indices that the government uses around deprivation and economic development. And they've assessed us as having a greater level of need than we have previously had in any other government funding assessment. And so from that perspective, that funding is seen as money that we should have and we need to have spent on residents, potentially in areas of deprivation, potentially tackling areas of inequality across the borough. And that's what this work stream as part of that Stronger Futures programme aims to achieve. A lot on this slide. I'll talk through the second half whilst you kind of digest some of these areas. But again, something that is very much working at pace at the moment. This programme is looking to invest in several areas that again will hopefully tackle that inequality and improve certain areas and certain aspects of the community across the whole of Dacorum. Again, it's not limited to certain areas, although it will be more focused on areas of deprivation. As we all know, deprivation can form many different avenues, such as health inequalities, education inequalities, economic inequalities. So a lot of work to do on those various areas. Some key projects that absolutely want to be supported by this. Firstly, looking at supporting phase 2 of Coronation Fields. Phase 2 of Coronation Fields, which some members will have seen over the last few months, is around moving the playground to a more accessible, open part of the park and providing a new play facility there. So again, in an area of the borough which is seen as more deprived, we're looking at investing in some of those public spaces and looking to invest in those community areas. In addition to that, we're reviewing antisocial behaviour hotspots, to look at how we can potentially improve our existing CCTV or implement new areas of CCTV. Firstly, to allow us to monitor and feedback on antisocial behaviour, but also to support the police force in their job and their role in terms of monitoring and managing antisocial behaviour. The second concept that's being looked at the moment, some of you will be aware of the TRAP project in Grove Hill, that's been run by a community interest company, which is looking at targeting youth, children who have antisocial behaviour issues or characteristics through sport and through music, giving them new avenues to explore that. And we're looking at potentially rolling that scheme out across other areas. Gatebridge, Hemel and Tring are listed here, but there's a wide range of areas that are being looked at the moment, and a full programme will be put together in terms of supporting that. The next one is around our adventure playgrounds, looking at potentially expanding some of the activities they do that are seen as beneficial at the moment, or delivering new activities at those. That might be directly ourselves or working with the third and voluntary sector to expand on some of that. Equally, picking up the next point, it's around working with more voluntary sector partners and looking at how they can look at providing services for vulnerable groups with an emphasis on youth engagement as well in terms of those areas, trying to tackle some of the youth issues that are happening in certain aspects of the borough. So from that perspective, not just direct delivery from Dacorum, but working with third parties and voluntary sectors to support that as well. And finally, which kind of bolts onto the Coronation Fields, we're doing a further review of our open spaces and play areas to see what other investments may be required as part of that. Now, one thing I did skirt over earlier is these 5 areas of investment, 4 that have been mentioned previously, and the tackling inequality, which is a new one, are going to form the Stronger Futures programme. One of the first steps to do post-approval, as long as it does get approved through council, is to set up a programme board to ensure that that's delivered. And the idea is to make sure that we get the resources in to make it deliverable and impactful in 26-27. So again, creating a programme that can be delivered. That's it from a revenue perspective. Councillor Hunt.
I just wanted to chip in the rationale behind the £500,000 being used to address inequality. As Nigel has said, the fair funding review was based on indices of deprivation. Dacorum have got this extra money on the basis that we have a level of deprivation that the government feels we should be resourced to address, and therefore we are using this to address that deprivation, particularly community assets and open spaces and things that have been highlighted by the government as falling within this extra funding. But additionally, whilst we've been a winner, the County Council has been a loser. And we're very conscious of the fact that there's going to be a lot of pressure on County Council services, particularly probably youth services. Hence, there's a strong vein in what Nigel presented, focusing on youth issues such as positive distraction from antisocial behaviour and so on and so forth. So that is the rationale behind this direction of travel, and I commend it to colleagues.
You'll be really glad to hear I've only got 2 or 3 more slides, and this slide here is just to summarise what is in your main report. There have been some recommendations made as part of the 26-7 budget to allocate some of the reserves towards some of the major investment programmes, the leisure investment and the fleet investment programme that are underway between 2026 and 2028. We have done a full review of our reserves and what is included in there. Part of this rationale is because, again, one of the few times I put my 151 hat on, the reserve balances are healthy enough to be able to provide this investment in these programmes. So from that perspective, it seems a sensible and pragmatic approach. And secondly, it reduces the burden on the revenue budget by reducing how much we would need to borrow, and equally hence reducing how much we would need to finance that borrowing. So from that perspective, it's an effective use of reserves. And with the caveat of with LGR around the corner, our reserves are less long-standing, or need to be less long-standing than maybe previously they would have been. From that, from both perspectives, it makes sense to go down that route. In terms of next steps, I'm sure you're all aware, we've obviously got scrutiny now, we've got Cabinet reviews, hopefully approval of the draft budget on the 3rd of February, and then on to Budget Council on the 18th of February to set a balanced budget and set the council tax levels for 26-27. And just a reminder there that, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be looking at setting up the programme delivery board to oversee delivery of this wide-ranging programme of works following that council.
Thank you very much, Nigel. We will take questions. Councillor Greenfield's hand up first.
In this section, you talked about £150,000 being allocated to the town centre review, and earlier in the meeting, we talked about £38,000 going towards the car park. How are we ensuring there's no overlap of funding, so we're not doubling up on things that the investment partnership is doing and things that other areas of the council are doing?
So it's a very good question. There's often areas where we overlap in terms of the assessment of that. Di Southland will be leading on the Hemel Town Centre Master Planning, and Di is obviously a board member in the investment partnership, so again we'll be feeding into what they're looking at from a water gardens perspective as well as other aspects of the town centre. So from that perspective, we're making sure we've got the right people on the right boards and the right groups so they can make sure that things are being looked at coherently.
Just to add to that, if I can, it's a relatively small amount of money that the investment partnership is looking to, but in the master plan, we wouldn't generally go into concept designs in any detail, but allowing that additional funding means we can do a bit more of a deeper dive into a concept design for the water gardens and car park area than we would otherwise be able to do.
Thank you. Councillor Guest.
Thank you. Why is the budget scrutiny at the end of what's been a long agenda with several substantive items? The budget scrutiny always used to be as a one item agenda. Possibly there'd be another item on it, but to have it at the end of a long agenda meant that the budget scrutiny couldn't be given the detailed scrutiny that it really merits, needs and deserves.
I would say we've had the length of time to go through the papers since they've been published in the same way. There are a number of reasons that I suspect that we have items there. My guess, with no disrespect intended, is I think that the officers currently present agreed to draw the short straw and wait towards the end of the night because the other items had other officers in. It's also worth saying we have had two separate meetings at the end of last year going through the 26-27 budget. This paper is merely focusing on the change of the one above. So, you know, all of our papers require a lot of scrutiny. Even though I didn't sort of feed into the agenda order on this particular case, I'm responsible for it. And it's a longer meeting than we've usually had, but we've got a lot of items. And I don't know if there's any other reason to say that, but I suspect it's to do with officer availability.
Yeah, exactly as you've set out. Absolutely, Brennan, and the fact that it is very much focused on the changes rather than going back over everything that was in the single agenda scrutiny, joint scrutiny in December.
That said, I will offer up Nigel's time and say, if anybody does have any questions that they come up with after this meeting, bearing in mind it has been a longer meeting than usual, I will admit that. I hope officers won't decline any of those. Councillor Gay.
Yes, just on the slide, thank you very much, Nigel, for that. As always, very detailed and thorough. And I do appreciate it. We do appreciate it. What does TRAP stand for? And could it possibly be something different, please? Because it doesn't seem like a particularly propitious acronym for something which is there to help young people out of poverty.
I will find it. And I did think earlier today I should have put the full one in there. And in terms of the title, the community interest company who operates it came up with a title, not us.
Must be person.
Perhaps it's T-Rap, and you're just not down with the kids.
I'm certainly down with kids. I've always been down with kids.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm just going to throw one comment in while I completely support the prioritisation of where we're suggesting that money is going to and those objectives. I just want to, and I should declare an interest, obviously being a trustee of a youth project. I want the council to be very mindful that when thinking about spending this money, that we have to make sure that we are not competing or taking any opportunities away from the third sector people who have had to step in. While we completely accept that we've had the point where there hasn't been enough central government funding to do these things, we've had a number of local projects that have stepped up to do it. If we invest heavily or materially heavily in these areas, what the council does may affect those organisations. So I just want to make sure that on each of the projects we choose to do, that we very much have impact analysis on those third sector sites.
Yeah, and the key is around deliverability and impactful. So we'll be working with our third parties, as we always do. Voluntary sector is the first port of call generally in terms of being able to deliver this. Coming back, TRAP stands for Teach, Reality and Progression.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I'll remember that.
Yeah, just to add to what Nigel said, that yes, absolutely, we don't intend to duplicate, and if we have, the approach will very much be looking and discussing with our partners in third sector, voluntary sector, what they can do and what their proposals are as well, because you know they're best placed and they're out there in the communities and have a lot of grassroots that links that we can make. So yeah, that's noted.
Okay. Right, if there are no further questions, I'm delighted to call the end of the meeting. We did manage to get in under the 2-hour window. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you to all the officers, and see most of you tomorrow.